series. We're on week 4, kind of the halfway point, if you will, or very close to the halfway point of going through these sessions. And Stevie and I were talking about this before we got on here, and as much as we'd like this to be a one-slide webinar where it's no more shiny objects, pay no attention to the shiny objects, we certainly know from observation and having to unwind a lot of this stuff that we need to spend some more time on this with those of you here, and if you're sharing this with your team. And it's interesting. It's a human nature challenge, and the human nature challenge is such that the shiny objects are attractive, especially for a lot of our personality styles. So we're going to spend some time on this today. If you have questions on it, you can certainly utilize the question box that's in the webinar panel or email afterwards. So if we talk about shiny objects and why this is an issue for real estate, it's not that it's only in real estate, but I would describe that it's especially bad in real estate. And what I mean by that is you see some of the most egregious examples of people that if they were in the corporate world, they would be fired their first day or week on the job. They may not even make it to day 2. I mean, I certainly know from my high-tech experience that if some of the behavior I see exhibited in real estate was exhibited in my sales teams, I would probably fire the boss who hired them and let them do that, and then fire the people too. But that's neither here nor there. I mean, real estate is what real estate is. So one of the things that I want to spend some time on today is following the money. I'm not going to dive down as to who's behind what, but just realize some of these Facebook groups are stealth discussions, whether they want to call them self-secret, like Stevie's term, or they want to kind of make it seem like it's exclusive. They're either a stealth group for a franchise, where they've got people in there trying to drum up business for the franchise in terms of agent headcount, or you see these great package reports that come out, and they're earth-shattering trend number 1, 2, or 3, certainly in the top 5, is that you need to implement a CRM. In the real world, in business, people would look at that and go, you guys are idiots, because they are. There's nothing earth-shattering about implementing the CRM. Now, choosing the right one and not getting distracted implementing it, that's important. But spending time, it'd be like suggesting that a attorney who bills out at $1,000 an hour needs to be able to figure out what kind of a dictation device he's going to use. And he's spending all this time online talking about the features and benefits of that, because he's going to dictate things that his paralegal's then going to act on. That doesn't happen in other industries, only in real estate. And then the second thing around this follow the money is the ecosystem around it. You see some of this in the IDX websites where you get it's not even an overpopulation, you get a distraction in that you get to build out all this content or work on it. And one thing, for example, I'll give you the specific example in the IDX world. It is so, in most markets that are hyper-competitive, it is so nearly impossible to rank in today's world the way that you could 7 or 10 years ago, that the IDX providers will tell you almost anything. I mean, there was one that put out a pitch in the last week. It's the same pitch they've been using for a long time, and the website generated 175 transactions. What they're not telling you is that same website has been up for 15 or 19 years or something ridiculous. It's been since the 90s. And it gets somewhere around 3,000 signups a month. So out of 36,000 opportunities, they're converting 175. It changes and skews the numbers. So be very careful about this ecosystem that wants to take your money. They're doing the same thing with webinars. If the webinars are not focused on fundamentals, and it's the latest and greatest and how to just magically set up your profile on social media, and you're going to be a quoted celebrity agent, you're going to be a quoted expert. This stuff is pure nonsense. It is. It's pure nonsense. How many markets truly have a celebrity agent, and who wants to be the celebrity agent that everybody makes fun of? I mean, you may choose to do that, but it is so not duplicatable. And all they're doing is they're creating an ecosystem to suck money out of the real estate channel. So be very careful. This is one of and the reason it's the first one on the first slide is this is the fundamental problem. The amount of kickbacks from companies that are taking money for endorsing things. If you think the franchise says, oh, we did all this research and we picked the latest and greatest technology system for you to be able to use, what they should be saying, if they were in a regulated industry like the financial services industry is, here's our disclosure. We're being kicked back money for every one of you that signs up for this. Because that's what's really going on in the back system. I don't mean this to be negative, but I really find that when I go through this topic with agents, they look at me like, there's no way all this is going on. Yeah, you're being defrauded on a daily basis if you're buying this stuff and thinking that somebody's looking out for your best interests. And there's a system now where the agent happens to be in Texas, and I know her very well. She hasn't really sold real estate in probably, 10 years. Her last tenure in the market was when the market was easy. This is back prior to about 2007, 2008, when anybody could virtually get a loan. And she had a successful team, was a superstar in the market. But now, after a series of sort of fits and starts on things and reinventions, she's got the latest and greatest system where, she's got this drip on people where she thinks she's going to mentor them.
For free.
Well, it's not really for free. It's a
well, for 1 week. Yeah, but that's her buy-in.
But this is the follow the money. That's not what's really going on here. I mean, there are a series of people who participate in all the seminars and all the panels and all the discussions, whether it's at NAR or it's at any franchise events, that, and I hate to break this to you, they're not telling the truth. They're absolutely full of it. And you'd like to think that people are not that way, and like we talked about a couple of weeks ago, shame on the franchises, shame on the organizers of these events for not doing their checking. This would be like a medical conference, putting a doctor up there who's lying to the audience. That wouldn't ever happen. Their liability and their exposure would be too huge. In real estate, we let it happen all the time. So somebody espousing that we've got this great shiny object and system that we use with no vetting, it's just that. They follow the money. Now, social media is a problem in and of itself. Again, the surgeon who's looking for the latest and greatest techniques is masterminding with other surgeons that do a lot of procedures. Attorneys do the same thing at conferences. They bill $1,000 an hour. They are not online trying to figure out how to implement a CRM. You want to make $300 to $1,000 an hour or $8 an hour? There's somebody in the law firm that worries about this stuff, and they probably don't make anywhere near $20 an hour in most markets. Don't act like that on social media. Don't get enamored with somebody. Again, there are a set of them. Some of them are very, very vocal. They're absolutely misleading you about what they're really doing. There was a conversation. There's an agent that's got a gigantic team in business, and he's up in the Seattle area. And I watched the conversation unfold, and somebody used him as an example of, I don't understand why such and such interviewed him because I didn't learn anything. And then somebody else 3 comments down said, he's very difficult to interview. Well, here's my take on that. He's difficult to interview because he's full of it. And the more he talks, the more he discloses, the more people that understand the business are going to realize you're not really doing what you're saying you're doing. If you watch the old shows about the 1800s, the building the railroads, and Stevie likes to watch these, they're pretty clear about who the snake oil salespeople are and the charlatans. Social media makes it easy for them to hide. Right? They get interviewed and everybody's like, oh my God, you do 570 transactions a year on your team? Really? And what about all the other stuff? And then they say that there's some shiny object that helps them be able to do this. So be very, very careful about what's going on in social media. There's a lot of promoting of things. There's, expand your business this way, do this, expand and do this strategy. But there's never any discussion about the downside. There's never any discussion about how do you handle this from the standpoint of, okay, there is some upside, potentially. What's the downside? What are the realities? The comment about that gentleman being very difficult to interview, I found confirmation. It was very enlightening because I've always felt, and I've known him for more than 10 years, that he's full of it. The very first time I met him, I said, this guy is going to completely mislead people because he's personable. He's charismatic. He can talk. But everything that I've heard out of his mouth is just pure fiction. And it's continued like that for 10 years. Now, the problem is the franchise loves to tout him and put him up on panels. And he's got enough of that aura now and that reputation that there's legions of agents that'll just like, oh, if he says do this, let's just do this. Don't be those agents. Again, the $300 to $1,000 an hour people in the business world would never do something like that. Here's the big one, number 3 here. Agents looking for distractions. We know, and this is going to be your number one thing that's going to be a challenge to keep yourself out of harm's way. We know instead of doing what you should be doing, and we'll talk a little bit about what that is today, these boring tasks get put aside because you got to implement the scoring system and all the drip campaigns in your CRM for your 5 leads. And when I say it like that, you should probably smile and hopefully not realize that people are looking at you going, you're implementing all this for like 5 leads. I don't care if it's 50. You still don't have enough leads to spend time doing that. And again, the $300 to $1,000 an hour attorney or the financial planner or a surgeon would never be in the middle of any of that stuff. There are people in the medical practices that all they do is keep that surgeon free to do what he does, his business activities, which is in his case procedures. In the case of an attorney, it's if they're a litigator that's actually going to pretrial hearings and going and presenting in court. Everything else is a distraction. Now in the real estate world, one of the things we observe is anything but the core boring task, the business development activities, is more palatable. There's not a bullet on this, but one of the reasons that we observe that this happens is because there's no boss, because there's no accountability, or because there's a dysfunction. It could be that anything ranging from, I really don't like my spouse and I want to get a divorce, so I don't want to make this bunch of money, but I'll have to pay in alimony, which is a ridiculous premise for how to run your business, to I have a spouse that makes almost $200,000 a year, and we're in this dysfunctional relationship where I'm not really carrying my weight, but nobody's saying anything. I'm pretending like I'm busy, but I'm not really doing anything. Again, if you were in the business world, working, let's just say high tech, you get fired the first day. You may not even make it to lunch, let alone the first week. So be careful of all the distractions and kidding yourself and figuring out why you're not willing to do what you need to do. Now the reward, when you do this, I'll give you the upside, is you're going to have so much time back to you that it's going to scare you if you've been doing the shiny object distraction game, keeping busy with your family. In other words, they think you're at work all day long and, oh my God, it was a 14-hour day. And at the end of the week, your coach asks you, let's talk about how many people you spoke with this week, how much business development activity, what happened this week. And you can't account for more than 3 or 4 hours. These are in 14-hour days. Now the upside is, when you get all that time back, you're going to have, it'll scare you, because you're going to have so much free time, because you're going to realize, oh my God, I was spending 65, 70% of my week doing distractions. Because there's a funny thing about any business development. This is not a real estate thing. If you're not talking to, in front of, or working with people that potentially could either do business with you or send you business, again, it's not the premise of, well, I got to get business out of everybody. You're not doing what you need to be doing to be growing your business. There are no autopilot shiny objects that just all of a sudden everything magically rains in. Sure, there's plenty of agents that when they come to us, they stumble through some of this stuff. And they're getting more business by default out of the database than some agents do hammering away every week being busy. But the reality is they could probably double their business by just going to work and eliminating the distractions. Anything you want to add, Steph?
No.
Okay.
You're doing awesome. This is one of our favorite topics, and just that a shiny object, we don't literally mean a shiny object. I mean, we see people just get all caught up in, oh yeah, I guess a shiny object, inside sales, don't measure performance. After 100 days, they finally realize we don't have one single lead because we don't know what we're doing. Or we had a client in the Midwest who the next shiny object was, well, she farms. And she gets 55 deals a year out of her farm. And I want to farm. Good. How long has she been doing it? Well, I don't know. How much does it cost her? I don't know. What kind of postcards does she send? Have they recipes or proof of life? Or I don't know. I just want to do it. Well, he went back and he found out she'd been doing it for 10 years. And she owned it. And she spent a lot of money in marketing, but put a lot of signs in the yard. But it took her 5 years before she owned it. Are you willing to do that expense for 5 years today, William? Now that you know the truth? Well, no,
it's a challenge for agents because the sister to I'm going to do anything and get distracted because I don't like the boring activities is a dogged pursuit of there's got to be a better way to do this. Somebody's got to have figured this out. Now the reality is, we talked about this a few weeks ago when we were talking about large teams versus listing-focused rainmaker businesses, that there's tens of thousands of people. We can take you into almost every city of the country, and there's somebody making a lot of money doing fundamentals. And there's very few people in any of these markets that have ever executed on these other strategies. But what do you hear all the time? This is leading my bullet point here on the bottom of this slide. They follow the herd. The franchise pushes all sorts of stuff that, as we talked about before, they're disingenuous in that they don't just tell you, we're trying to drive headcount. We have so much turnover. It's kind of like think of an old, Persian or other battle that you've seen stories of, and people are just falling off the cliffs. In most large franchises, their attrition rate, we were both team leaders, the attrition rate of the bottom half, certainly the bottom quarter, is close to 80%. Now, there's 2 points I want to make here, and one is the quote you see from Stevie over there. If people would just stop the shiny object stuff and the distractions, first of all, you're going to have to do some business development and some activity. You're going to see it turn around quickly. When we see people fail, it's 100% of the, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to open up the Chinese menu, and today I'm ordering a B3 combo. The next day, I'm going to do this. Or, we can hear it in conversations when we do trainings and or if they're coaching clients. The conversation is, I heard about this on Facebook, or I ran into an agent who was doing this, and I want to try it. That's the language of people that are so distracted by shiny objects that it's hard for them to stay on track because their mind is consumed. And this is an old Napoleon Hill concept. It has to do with what you think about, what you have on your mind, and you embed it enough. In other words, what you think about most is what you're going to be eventually surrounded with. It's a concept of this immersion. The problem is that so many in real estate are immersed in the wrong things. It's the corollary to you become like the 5 people you spend most of your time with. That's also related to the online piece, right? If you're talking to people that are not being honest about what's really going on, and some of them are I call them cyber bullies because they're so vocal about their stuff. And some of these administrators of these large groups on Facebook just are not doing anybody any kind of favor, right? They think it's some sort of their democratic way of just keeping the peace out there. So be very, very careful about following the herd. You're going to see some stories about strategies in the next 3 to 5 years that are going to fail wholesale. The only winners are going to be the franchises. The only winners are going to be the people that sell the systems. And you're going to see in a market, like we talked about before, where the low inventory market is going to actually spur on a lot more turnover. There's more people coming into the business, and there's more people failing because there's a perception that it's easier, right? Once you sell your neighbor's house and your mother-in-law's friend, what are you going to do next, right? But the problem is, when there's enough of those people coming in, if you're out there distracted with shiny objects trying to build a better system, you're doing the same thing, right? You're missing every transaction you miss because you're not doing your business development. It's an easy one for somebody else to pick up because there's plenty of them. I just saw somebody the other day on social media. I had to look up the lady's name. I didn't know who it was. There's 2 teams that merged together in St. Louis, and then there was somebody from outside the real estate industry that was proud to be joining that team. What that poor lady doesn't realize who's joining their team is, collectively, one of those 2 rainmakers has had 100% turnover on her team for 5 years. There's nobody there that's been there for 5 years. Nobody has survived. But people don't ask good questions, and I use that as an example. So we understand what's going on. And this isn't meant to be a negative thing, but this is like when you're failing classes in school and somebody sits you down and says, look, you're going to have to go a different direction if you're going to succeed. I had this conversation had with me when I was about the end of my sophomore year in high school. It was a guidance counselor. It wasn't even my parents. And he sat me down and said, you're going to be like an auto mechanic if you don't get your grades up. You're not going to be able to go to school, especially the kind of schools that you're saying that you want to go to. I had to make a change. This is that kind of conversation today. You're the only one that's going to choose to avoid shiny objects or get attracted to them. And one of the reasons this happens is the first bullet point here, which is independent contractor versus jobs. I refer to a business. There's no accountability unless you have great mentoring or coaching that'll keep you off track. And even for people that have mentors or coaches, sometimes they're their own worst enemy because they'll yes the coach to death, and then they will just watch what happens. Hey, if you show up and we figure it out in the course of the conversation, because you're a training or you're a coaching client, that you really spent less than 3 hours on business development, you didn't work last week. Because I can tell you that if you work for Dell Computers in Austin, Texas, and the sum total of a day is 3 hours and your job is in sales, you won't make it to 5 o'clock. Now, the independent contractor piece, we can't solve, right? You're free to live in your fantasy land as agents. Start paying attention to what your thought process is. If it starts with, I think I'm going to do this because I saw it advertised on social media, or I got an email about this strategy. If people are not telling you the truth, and their truth is out there on social media, to look at it. I mean, there's a gentleman that we have a lot of great respect for. So he's been around. He's a fundamental guy. He's been around for probably 40-something years, 50 years in real estate. And he was talking about one of these shiny object purveyors of reports and then also seminars. And he said, they invited me to an event. And I'm going to paraphrase his quote, but it was referring to some of these disingenuous interviews. And so he said, I want to give you the equivalent example of the seminars and the training and some of the other things. He said, I spent all day there, and what I realized was, even if it could have been cleaned up, packaged up, they could have fixed their content, plus it up by a factor of 10 times, it still would have been the biggest waste of time I've had in 10 years. So be very careful about what you're spending your time on. There's very little of it that's worthwhile. Nobody's really telling you the truth, which is there's a set of business development tasks that are boring, that if you don't do them, you're going to struggle to have a consistent source of business. If you don't have the right sources of business like we talked about week 1, that go along with your market, you're going to struggle as well. And this gets back to work ethic. There's a lot of stuff out there in books. There's a lot of stuff out there in systems and things that promise that you're going to game the system. I mean, the celebrity agent is one of them. There's no shortcuts or tricks. I mean, it should be conceptually when we pull back the curtain. If you don't have as many people as one of your competitors that you talk to, meet with, and or potentially are in a relationship to work with, you're going to make a lot less money. There is no, well, but he did this and this magically happened. I mean, there's always a but, like Stephanie's example of she's farming for 5 years. And here's the problem. I'm going to tie that one down. Most systems, books, trainers don't talk about the reality. And the reality is, if there is an entrenched agent in a particular farm or area, it's not like people are buying Kenmore, General Electric, or some other appliance where you've got market share for 3 people, or companies in their case. There is nothing like that if there's a dominant agent. You're going to have to be in it for the long haul and just realize until that agent quits, dies, or something else happens, there is no significant agent number 2. In other words, there was an agent in one of our markets in St. Louis that, did I list and sell quite a few properties in her area? Absolutely. They typically came by referral, or they were a for sale by owner that I went and solicited, and just because of personality, they liked me better than her. But I certainly didn't go after her market. She had 31% market share. 1 in 3 signs in the yard and 1 in 3 transactions was her. Good luck with that. The big team I tell you about that I work with, when I went and did the analysis for them, they didn't want to hear it. They didn't make any changes, and that's another contributing factor for them running themselves out of business. We had been farming for well over 2 years, sometimes 3+ years, in large subdivisions, and they had 0 transactions on a rolling 12 or 18-month period. 0. You have to be realistic. Now, one of the things I saw that was coincident with that was either low turnover rate or worse, lower turnover rate combined with high market share. So be very, very careful. There aren't any systems where you can just connect the dots and go, well, this will just be an easier way to do it. The large team model is a perfect thing for the work ethic. There are more agents that drop down by more than half in their personal production that have large teams, because the books, the systems, the programs, the training, just expand and open up your business like this doesn't tell the truth of the fact that I would have to probably interview in high tech 10 to 15 people who had a good track record, a great resume, to find somebody who was a great leader that could lead teams. Yet in real estate, we think everybody can lead a team. And the reality is, if you take your most profitable source of business, which is the listing side of the business, it's like the perfect storm. You're promised less work, less of the boring activities for business development, and by the way, start doing your math. Wow, if I've got 5 people doing this and they can just do this many transactions, I can add 100 transactions to my business. Show me the number of people that have done that profitably. Show me the number of people that have done it where it sticks and they don't have 100% turnover like that agent I was telling you about in St. Louis. It's fiction designed to drive headcount for franchises. Fiction designed to drive. And I hate to be the bearer of bad news. Nobody is talking about this. If, like in the mortgage world, the CFPB was after real estate, you would see franchises get fined like the fines that you see at Chase Manhattan Bank. They are so misleading their agents. It should be an embarrassment for them, but they're not regulated, so they can do it. So don't be that agent that thinks, I just don't need to have the work ethic. I'm going to figure out a better way to do this. Now, like I said before, if you eliminate the distractions and the busyness, first thing you're going to realize, and if you followed me around in St. Louis, you would realize that this is the case. Anybody that came in to shadow me usually was in and out in a day or 2. They were thinking they needed to stay around for a week because of this flurry of activity they normally see.
Mm-hmm.
And they would come in and they would watch me. And if they didn't get there early enough, they didn't see any of the business development activity between like 7:20 in the morning and 9 o'clock. And I typically had more of that done before 9 a.m., before the rest of the agents in our brokerage would even come into the office. And then if I had more free time, I would do some more of it. The rest of the time, I was previewing houses and doing things real estate related, or just trying to figure out how to not have to be in the office. You're going to have so much success by doing the right activities that you're going to have a lot of free time. So the work ethic thing is a myth. The busy, oh my God, I've got 14-hour days, I got all this stuff going on. And this is really bad with shiny objects and technology. You'll see people go, I've been working on this for 6 months. I'm finally got my first lead. Really? Really? You've been working on something for 6 months, and you're putting in 12, 14-hour days. How much business could you have had if you just got on the phone and talked to people, if you just went and met with people? It could be a lot more than you're going to be able to create in the next 5 years out of your shiny object. But they're trying to find the way around doing the work. Some of them, because their behavioral style is more in the DISC profile, more S&C, and they prefer not to have to talk to people, which is an interesting choice in real estate, but they're out there. Now, chasing success. Agents hear about unvetted success. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because we've just talked about some of this. It's this great stories of fiction where nobody raises their hand. I mean, can you imagine you're at one of these big events, there's 10,000 people there, and they opened it up for questions, and somebody said, talks about your P&L or what you're doing, or, how do you track your numbers? Because I'm in your MLS and I pulled the numbers and it's not 570 transactions, it's X. I mean, somebody called them on it. I mean, can you imagine they got a gap in the room?
That'd be great.
I mean, I hate to say this, but if you want to understand the culture of some of these large franchises, they've got a challenge, right? It's like they're addicted to their own success, which is agent headcount. And here's the fiction they're running. They're lying about their headcount. We know directly from individual markets and also from repetitive times that we've seen this, that some of these franchises, because they want to be the biggest or they want to say we netted this and we have this going on, they're faking the numbers on headcount. Some of you may be shaking your head like, are these people out of their minds? No. We can tell you it's going on. When people discover it, they're either summarily dismissed or they're bought off. But it is this fiction that you need to be thinking about. And this is just meant to be this shiny object topic. And we have to go through it this way because we can't just tell you don't follow what you see online, don't buy into the shiny object, right, the distractions. You have to understand why it's going on. They'll tell agents anything and everything they want because, God forbid, they don't stay with the company. They're even further behind on their agent headcount quest. The last one, and I'll let Stevie talk about this a little bit, is there's this correlation to an attraction to shiny objects that gets into the work ethic and wanting to get away from the boring stuff and be busy. Agents are lost, feeling they must need some sort of solution to have success. In other words, it can't be just like this, right? And again, if you followed me around and were shadowing me, you would be bored to tears like, oh my God, you do that every day? Yeah, but I don't do any of the 10,000 other things you're doing all week long. So I can get done in like 25 hours what you're spending 65 hours on. Who's got a better life? And there are lots of agents that are like this, and they're lost in that they don't know what their why is. In other words, they say, I want to grow my business, I want to double it, I want to add 50 transactions, I want to add 100 transactions, but there's no driver behind it. There's no why. You become what you think about most. What is driving them to do that? Because the harsh reality is it's boring. It's not going to be as exciting as you want it to be. But the other side of that is when you do what you need to be able to do, business development-wise, it is remarkably one of the easiest jobs in the world. I think Stevie would have been more upset if she realized that if she followed me around outside the office, she was busy messing around with the agents at the office, that there's not a lot of work going on other than business development. Or I was solving problems on transactions on occasion. But I had to go figure out how to fill a lot of my time. If you do what you're supposed to do, you get a lot of time back. But the why has to drive you. What are you driving towards? What does the 25 more transactions, what does $100,000 more mean to you? And how are you going to get yourself on track so that you're not having it fall apart, because it really doesn't mean anything to you, right? It's just a number on a whiteboard, or it's a piece of information that you put out there. But if somebody were to ask you the question, so let's talk about this extra $100,000 in income, what will you and your family do with that? And there's usually a pause, or this is where I'll let Stevie talk for a minute. Is it not like a complete disconnect just on this last one?
Yeah. They're making $400,000 or $500,000 now. Example of some of our clients, and they went to the most recent, coolest event with their brand last week, and now they want to make $1 million. Okay, explain that to me, because you can make your $500,000 20 hours, 25 hours a week working and going on appointments and being listing focused, or you can make $1 million. I'm not saying it's not good. It's a good goal, but why does it matter to you, and what are you willing to give up for that? Well, I just want to make $1 million because everybody wants to make $1 million. Well, the only people, that's like half of 1%. So I always question anybody who says to me, I want to make $1 million. It's because they read the book and the other book and then the newest book and went to the camp and the event, and I want to make $1 million just like he did. But you don't know the truth about what he had to do to make $1 million and the hell that he went through managing 8 buyer's agents like we had to. Is it worth it? It's a question I can ask, and some people just don't understand. As long as you're willing to give what he had to give up to do it, yeah, sorry, and I digress. It's confusing to me. Do you want a life, or do you just want to make money? Because that doesn't make any sense to me. And honestly, Kevin, and you and I both talk about this, you're not welcome into our tribe, because I can't help you, because you don't even know why you want to make that kind of money. Well, just because other people did it. It's like, let's just say the truth about Barbara Corcoran. Clients paying $50,000 to get endorsed by Barbara Corcoran. And I swear to God, it's in Facebook. I got into some social media tiff with a guy who said, please, because I questioned Barbara Corcoran. He said, please take that post down. No. And I asked him, I said, why did you do that? Well, I have other friends that are doing it, and I thought I'd do it too. $50,000. Talk about peer pressure.
Well, it's there. If you think about insourcing and outsourcing and things like that, there are strategies that you can do, and there's a couple of bullet points on here that deal with this. But we want to tie down a few things, right? You can do certain things. If you want to buy endorsements and buy stuff like that, just realize you're going to get a 0 or close to 0 ROI. The only person making money in that kind of scenario is the people that hawk it, because what they're not telling you is they're not just doing that because they're really cool people. They're making a big portion of that $50,000 just by parading through agents that are willing to spend $50,000 a crack for an endorsement. So it's this disingenuous, but what's even more amazing to us is people just don't even understand that that's what's going on, right? They look at you like you're talking like a heretic. Like, how could you possibly say that? There's no way they're doing that. Yeah, that's exactly right. So technology, implementing technology, just remember this. If for your handful of leads, you're implementing a really complex system, it's not strategic. It's a huge distraction. Any other business would have some techie or outsource it and have something just work for what they need. And you're also not doing 100,000 units, so a lot of this stuff you don't need, like the custom scoring of leads and things like that. No, just convert them by doing the core activities. You don't need to score them. The reason you want to score them is, again, it's a distraction. Training on unproven solutions, shiny object purveyors, they're getting beyond the mere technology. They're starting to do success systems and trainings and masterminds and webinars. What they're doing is they're trying to keep reinventing themselves as they're trying to continue on with expansion, whether it's a franchise or they're trying to expand their product line. Because you can't be a one-trick pony and you wrote a report and you said implement a CRM, because I think that's sort of put itself out. even though it's a ridiculously frequent discussion. Now, the online gossip, we beat this to death. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. Unvetted success stories with incomplete information. There are no secrets out there. There isn't some great whiz-bang thing. The secret is what's really going on in most markets. Every one of those markets where there's somebody going, oh, I figured this out, it's great, I sent this postcard out, or whatever it was. There are a set of agents in that market that are cleaning that agent's clock. And he or she does not realize it's even going on. It's just rinse and repeat instead of just working. Oh, I got this one. This one's going to work. Busy is the enemy of success. Agents implementing lots of shiny objects or complex solutions are often complaining about being so busy. We talked about this. They're busy because I work 25 hours. I probably worked a little bit more than that because we had a brokerage too and did training and other things. But on my core real estate business, it was like 25 hours a week. And I did more business than the other 36 agents combined. Do you think I was doing $10 an hour activity or $300 activity? It was all $300 activity. Don't confuse yourself with being busy. The second thing that you may have to come clean with is with your spouse or business partner if you're in business with somebody about the fact that you've been kidding yourself about being busy. Because you're going to be sitting around until you do your business development activities. Now, look at other businesses. If you want to be in a mastermind or mentoring, get outside input. You know, this is why coaching works. This is why mastermind groups outside of real estate work, right? There's two things that we see, and I'll touch on this because I know we're going to wrap up in about the next 5 minutes. There are two things we see in training and also in the coaching business that are the kiss of death. Out comes the Chinese menu at the franchise, and they're now implementing all sorts of things that are just pure distraction. And it becomes like a tug-of-war. On the far end of the rope are productivity coaches, team leaders, brokers, whoever's on the other end. And they're all with their bullhorn calling that agent to their side going, oh, God, can you be involved with this? Can you train on this? Can you implement this? This is perfect. I just came back from my training, and you need to implement this. These agents that get into that mode fail at almost 100%. They fail at almost 100% by this metric. Number one, they're not in coaching with us, usually within 6 months. And most of the time it's because we just get tired of trying to unwind the ridiculous stuff that they've heard that week in the office. Because they're on the phone with us for an hour, hour and a half a week. They're in the office for 25 hours a week or more with the pure fiction being poured over them. It's easy to see how they get so distracted. Be very, very careful about that. The average production drop can be as much as 100%, meaning they fail, they're out of the business. Sometimes it's 50%. Don't emulate practices around you that are unproven. Shut off the distractions. You have to figure it out. Just disable your account all day long, and then if you have an hour you want to look at it and go on there because you can't help yourself, turn it back on for an hour. But don't go spend the amount of time that we see people spending in there. Think billable hours. Set yourself a standard. What's my minimum per week? If I'm worth $300 an hour and I know long term I will get these dollars per hour based on taking listings and things selling and then getting a client that maybe sells that also needs to buy another house, you can average $300 an hour off activity, which is business development related. What's your minimum standard? How many hours at a minimum are you willing to do? For some of you, getting above 3 or 4 hours would be a major feat. You should be thinking 15 or 20 if you want to be like that $1,000 an hour attorney or financial services person. If you have big goals like what Stephanie was talking about. For many of you, you can get 10 to 15 hours of solid business development in per week, and your business is going to skyrocket. Your rope that you're playing tug-of-war with and your distractions are probably all the shiny objects trying to pull you off of the core activity. I can tell you I would probably get fired at Dell if I said I was only going to work 10 or 15 hours in business development if I was in sales. That was my comment earlier that in real estate, it works. You don't have to work 65 hours a week. People can teach you how to set up your business, especially if it's listing focused and rainmaker focused. So you don't have to spend a gazillion hours. But think billable hours. If you have no billable hours or you have 3 billable hours at the end of the week, or even 5, you're not at your minimum threshold. And then the whole insource versus outsource, it's a chicken and egg problem for real estate. Everybody tries to implement all the systems and all the shiny objects. And everybody likes to think that, oh my God, this is the greatest system. This CRM is the new up and coming one. I'm going to implement this. And the reality is, you can just put it on postcards for your handful of leads and worry about it later. Wait till you hire somebody to deal with this. You know, the example of where you'd want to outsource or insource, but figure it out, either through your research combined with, if you're in coaching with us, something like geographical calling. We talked about that in length in previous sessions and in Listing Mastery. That's one of the best sources to get in front of the whole name badge at the grocery store. But the development of your business plan and business development activities, the right person needs to help you implement. You shouldn't be thinking about yourself as an implementer. And some of what I was talking about, where you have a minimum billable hours of 10, 15, 20 hours, has to do with your ultimate goal, like a business owner, of getting off of the train to a larger extent. You may choose to outsource some of your business development activities, especially in areas like geographical calling, because they're not skills-based. There's still some gotchas in how to implement that. But what you need to do is you need to get to the point where you can even invest in that, because it's really like investing in a second business. It's real estate related. So I know we're close to wrap-up time. Is there anything you want to add to this?
No, only that we know what y'all are doing. We were part of that years ago when we were just trying to figure it out. We tried everything. And we finally figured out that, well, we're really good at this. Kevin, prospecting, we're really good at that. So we didn't do farming. We didn't do farming. We didn't do the 33 touch. We didn't care about our CRM. Whatever we knew, it was easy. It was Top Producer. And get Mojo Dialer and a great headset and go. It's our business plan. Hire people that are smarter than us to set up the listings and do our contract to close and manage our money, pay the bills, distribute everything to the realtors when they get closings, and have my brother in there who works with the buyer's agents and solving problems. And I ran the team, and Kevin ran the business. Literally got the business. You can't do it all on your own, and don't try to do everything. The reason the big brands are throwing so many different things at people is because there's different personality styles. They have to do what's sexy for the D's, what's sexy for the I's, what's sexy for the S's, and what's sexy for the C's. And we got to share all of that because it's not just the one brand, it's all brands. We're not picking on anybody. It is a Chinese menu. Pick what fits you. But you think it's the next best shiny thing, and it's probably not the one for you. Some of you on here that we're talking about going into business together. We're going to get real harsh on this stuff. There's some of you that have been following us, kind of shadowing us for a long time, and I know you're about ready to go, I want to be in business with you guys. I need you as my board of advisors. But we are harsh about the shiny objects. We're not a fit for everybody. So I just want to kind of end with that. No, great conversation today. We could do this for 10 weeks and tell you about what to stay away from. We got to move this along. Hire a coach. Don't hire us. Hire somebody smarter than you to help you make good decisions about your business. Doesn't have to be us. Just make sure it's somebody who's been there, done that.
Whoever you hire, whatever training, whatever you're consuming as far as your input of personal development for real estate, just make sure they're candid, they're experienced, and they'll talk to you about mistakes as well as successes. There's too much of the everything works and I'm a guru and I'm going to teach you to do exactly what I did, and then you never hear the truth. So with that, we'll be back next week.
Yep.
And thank you very much for your time.
Have a great day. Bye-bye.